be talking about access to credit, technologies, rural technology, women in industry, use of technology, and what migrant women, central actors in the inter-American system, can contribute to their countries. This is a forum which becomes hopefully a habit, something customary. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. I am Carla Beria Sanchez. I greet you from Mexico City, and the ICA team will give you an explanation on the simultaneous interpretation function. Thank you all. Good morning. Thank you, Ms. Sanchez. At this event, we have the simultaneous interpretation function available in 3 different languages, and therefore, we ask you very kindly to select the language in which you will be speaking during the meeting. That language you can find at the bottom part of your Zoom screen, and you will see an icon there in the shape of a globe. So you click on that, and you select the language you will be hearing in and speaking in to make things easier for the interpretation function. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Sanchez. Back to you. Thank you. If you have any doubts, you can write that down in the chat to get assistance. Remember, this is a closed forum, and we hope that the experience of the ministers and vice ministers improve the public, the responsibility of all of us. The objective is to highlight the role of women in agriculture and agro-industry, particularly strengthening their public responsibility. We thank Manuel Otero, Director General of the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation on Agriculture, can give us some words. Go ahead, Dr. Otero. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to organize this first forum of female ministers and secretaries of agriculture of the Americas. Since we are formally in Brazilian territory, I would like to thank the minister for her hospitality and participation, for institutional participation with the ICA, which I thank very much for. Honorable Minister Correa, I would like to highlight the presence of the outstanding Minister of Ecuador, whom I wish the best of success. On behalf of the 2 of you, I would like to greet the rest of the ministers and secretaries. I understand that we will count on the participation today by a dear friend, Secretary General of UNCTAD, Rebecca Grinsman, whom I thank very much for her participation and her friendship. I would like to thank her for strengthening ties with me. This forum is held on the first day of the World Food Systems Pre-Summit. And it has a special meeting to be holding this first forum of female ministers and secretaries, because here we are building the future of food systems in the world. And our continent has to be the protagonist and will be the protagonist. This is how we understand this. There are many statistics that ratify a painful reality regarding the invisibility of women. I'm going to say that there are 58 million women in Latin America and the Caribbean. 17 million of them are registered as economically active, and only 4.5 million are recognized as agriculture producers. So this is an under-recorded or under-registered task, because this is considered just as part of household work, very respectable though, but not recognizing the fact that those 58 million women, rural women, are responsible for 80% of the production of most of the developing nations, particularly Latin America. Figures are overwhelming. 40% of them do not have their own economic income. Only 10% of them have access to credit. 5% have access to technical assistance programs. So just imagine a very painful reality. And at ICA, therefore, we would like to uh, change pages and support to generate policies that empower women as responsible for that reality, which is a significant proportion of the work in agriculture. I would like to say that this forum has to be whatever you decide. ICA is an institution at your service that accompanies you and must understand the mandates coming from you in this case. If you want us to meet regularly, we will do so. If you want us to form technical teams or identify projects, well, ICA is at your service, whatever you decide. We will try to interpret it and build that new institutional structure, which is so badly needed for the transformation of agri-food systems in our area. Thank you very much, Madam Minister, for your hospitality. I return the floor to Carla for her to continue with the agenda. Thank you so very much. Thank you. Thank you, Manuel Otero, Director General of the Inter-American Institute for our Cooperation on Agriculture. We would like to thank Rebecca Grinspan, Ibero-American Secretary General, to speak about the role of rural women in agri-food systems. Go ahead, Madam Grinspan. Thank you so very much, Carla. I would like to very especially greet you. I am in Madrid here. I would like to greet my dear friend, Director General of ICA, Manuel Otero, for doing such an outstanding task. Thank you very much for this activity, Manuel. The truth it is very important, not only for rural women, but also for all the objectives that we may set out for the post-pandemic recovery and achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. I would like to warmly greet all the ministers that are here with us. I am so glad to see you all. The first time I talked about this matter, precisely that was at ICA in 1991, Manuel. There were very few ministers of agriculture at that time. Many of you perhaps are the first or perhaps the second or maybe even the third, but I would say that equality will arise when we no longer have to count how many we are in the positions we hold. You are pioneers. You have broken many crystal roofs, glass roofs. Thank you all so very much for being here with us. It is an honor for me to participate at this forum. The vice ministers, undersecretaries that are here with us, greetings. A very special greeting also to those that do not speak Spanish. I will address you all in Spanish today. I am still Ibero-American Secretary General. We have two official languages, which are Spanish and Portuguese. Dear Minister of Brazil, it is a pleasure. But I understand Portuguese, but I do not speak it as well as Spanish, though.
Welcome to this fora. It's really an honor to be here with you all. Well, yo quiero empezar por decir que
I would like to start by saying that I am not an expert in the subject matter, but I have always defended the spaces for discussion where women are given a voice, because it is no longer enough to say, there is a forum or a presentation or a space for dialogue with where we have gender perspective. Because as a writer, one writer said no long ago, she said, Rebecca, we women have been spoken about. Now we get to speak. That is why it is so important for us to be sitting at the table, making decisions, discussing important matters of interest to us all. And although I warmly remember, as I said before, the years I was at ICA, at a project, dear Manuel, that changed my whole perspective, allow me to say, my outlook on women producers of food products or women in agri-food systems. It is painful to see that so many years later, dear Manuel, basically we're at the same point regarding women, the situation of women in rural areas. I remember that in that project we undertook together with the ICA entitled the Women of Corn, the Corn Women, we basically published a book regarding this in Central America. But we had basically the same problem with information that you just shared with us a moment ago. Many women that we know have two or three different activities to do at the same time in rural areas. And they work in the field, but at the same time, they are not recorded as farmers or as economically active citizens. I remember we undertook an exercise to analyze the population that the survey said was not economically active. And it was interesting to see what they said about that, because we were asking these people, what do you do? Most of the women said they worked more than half of the day out in the field, but they said they were not economically active and that they did not work. And that problem continues to be exactly the same. There's an under registry problem with this information. Thank you, Ika, for giving us the accurate numbers, all the statistics and indicators, Manuel, you just shared with us. Otherwise, this invisibility would be completed. Allow me to begin my comments trying to understand the moment we are living due to the pandemic.
Pensar en qué es lo que esto ha significado
Think
para
of
todos.
what this has meant for all of us. Because I really believe, and it is somewhat bold and daring of me to say so, but I believe we are truly seeing a change in times. Many times we said it would be coming, but I believe the pandemic has turned many of these trends into reality, all these trends that we could see, trends in technology, the social trends, economic trends, those things that we could see coming. Now we are starting finally to see the beginning of the 21st century. The 20th century perhaps started with the First World War back in 1914. But I believe that regarding the life of people, the daily lives of citizens of all our population, all the world, this is really the beginning of the 21st century because it has really changed our way of seeing life, of seeing time, of seeing threats, because it has put us in front of a mirror showing us our inequalities, our weaknesses, and has shown us our interdependency. And I believe that is important because it has to make us think about how we conceive development. And finally, it has to push us to take a quantum leap in the way we measure development. And the indicators and statistics that we used to see in the past have now taken us to make the wrong decisions. For example, when we measure development using GDP, for example, with the gross domestic product, and we see that in 1 year of pandemic, 1 year, we have gone back 20 years in Latin America in the progress we had made in fighting extreme poverty, for example. And in a matter of 1 year, we lost a whole decade of food security. And in 1 year, we have lost a whole decade regarding the indicators of progress we had seen at the beginning of these last 2 decades. So if we are measuring poorly, we are making the wrong decisions. And part of measuring poorly is that we used to base ourselves for our decisions on averages. And what we know is that in unequal societies, averages hide more than what they reveal. Because in unequal equalities, the average or the mean does not reflect what the most vulnerable groups and the most vulnerable groups are experiencing. Because those averages really don't tell us what happens in inequalities in a territory and in rural areas, because that did not tell us what was happening with the lower profiles of income. Those averages were not telling us what was happening with all the youth that are suffering unemployment and inequality and forcing them to migrate from rural areas to gain access to agriculture and a better future. And this, I believe, IICA has a very important role here to play to show off what these averages hide, because only if we know the reality in greater detail will we really be able to make the best decisions we need to make in order to have more sustainable, more equitable development, and more robust development in addressing the problems and challenges and pandemics that affect our world. My second point is that in this new age, we need to take this qualitative leap in the way we measure how we conceive rurality. We have to see how we can get away from this dichotomy between rural and urban and instead consider it a continuum where interdependency of urban and rural is very evident and visible in order to make the correct decisions. There is no such dichotomy. What we have is a continuum that we need to address, we need to manage so that it does not become an extractive relationship between urban and rural, but instead to further enable the territory, to enable the local, not extract value, but instead add value. The new paradigm of sustainable development has this right in the core of its creation. We're not talking about extracting value from workers or extracting value from nature. No, it is not about extracting value from our territories. No, this is all about giving value, adding value, being able to value that to move towards more sustainable and more robust development. And there, in that framework, is where we talk about gender equality. There, in that framework, is where we talk about the transformational and proactive nature of women. And as I have said here many times, I would like to highlight is that women are not a vulnerable group. We are a vulnerable group. We have been vulnerated in our rights. We do not want to be seen in vulnerability as if that vulnerability were intrinsic. There is no such intrinsic vulnerability. What we do have is a vulneration of rights. And we want to be seen in our ability to transform the rural world and society. And if we do not do that, we would be making a big mistake because we would not have sustainable development and we would not have a post-pandemic recovery that will take us back to normal, which is much more inclusive and much more sustainable. And my last point, dear Manuel, is to highlight that the agenda for gender equality is not exactly the same agenda for all women. No, but the gender equality agenda has to be able to consider the differences, the heterogeneity of what we call women. There is no such equality of one woman. No, these are all different equalities, different women that have different realities and require specific policies for their own reality. And that is where the agenda we have set out is so important because rural women require or need specificity in public policies and in the way to address that, which is so different from many of the priorities or needs that other groups of the population could have, just as indigenous women need, or Afro-descendant women need, or that also experience discrimination because they are Afro-descendants or indigenous women, but also because they are women. And I end because we are running out of time with data shared by Manuel. 51% of the food products in the Americas are produced by women. 51%. However, only 5% of these women receive technical assistance. Just imagine. As we say, we make this big mistake of training John in what Johanna has to do. And as long as we train John instead of Johanna, we will not reach sustainable development. We will not be able to take that qualitative leap we need, because if we do not change agri-food systems, there will not be sustainable development. We all know this. If we do not do something in this field, sustainable development and sustainability will be at risk. And if we women produce more than half of the food products in the Americas, if we do not do something in this field, we will be a total failure in our willingness to meet the agenda, the 2030 agenda and the sustainable development goals. But I would like to ask Manuel that it is not just about training women. No, everybody that works in the sector, because precisely part of the problem of credit, of land, of technology is that all of those that work in the sector continue to have this paradigm, the 20th century paradigm. They continue to see the agri-food sector and the participation of women in the rural world exactly the way it was seen 100 years ago. We have to change that culture. We have to change that mindset, not only for women to be more productive and have access to land and to credit and to training and to technology, which are indispensable for what we need to do. But at the same time, we need that the trainers, those that technology providers, those that make decision on land use or on granting credit, it is important for them to know the reality that the ministers and vice ministers and undersecretaries that are with us today know. This is a systemic change, a cultural change of the entire ecosystem, the ecosystem that makes up the agri-food world. This is indispensable in order for us. The next time we see each other, dear friends, this is something we can talk about, a different rurality, a rurality where women occupy the space they are entitled to in order to go to a new post-COVID normal, a normal which is much more inclusive and much more sustainable. We do not want to go to the back to the previous normality because that was the one that was discriminating us. We want something new, something better. And without women, we will not be able to do it. Thank you.
Gracias, Rebecca Greenspan. Nos deja pensando, bueno, siempre nos
Thank
deja
you very
pensando.
much, Rebecca Greenspan. You always gives us food for thought. She is our American Secretary General, and she asked a question that we will be solving in the panel with the 14 ministers and 5 ministers. So I ask you to please turn on your camera. It's going to be very nice to be able to see your faces rather than your name. It's going to be much cooler, like we say in Mexico. So it's going to be nice to see your faces and ask ourselves, are we measuring development poorly? And are we doing that because of discrimination, because of lack of knowledge, because we are measuring things incorrectly with measurements that are not updated? Many questions. So we thank the participations of the honorable ministers in the alphabetical order of the countries. I see Samantha Marshall. She's the Minister of Agriculture, Fisheries, and Barbuda Affairs. Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Let me recognize the Director General of ICA, Mr. Manuel Otero, other members of ICA, fellow Ministers of Agriculture, Vice Ministers, Secretaries, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to be a little brief. I thought it would be best just to have a quick discussion as to what is happening in Antigua and Barbuda. And historically, the role of women within agriculture has been that women would develop what we call the family farms, primarily to assist with the care of their family. It has evolved. In fact, Antigua and Barbuda focus primarily on tourism. And of course, like most of the countries during the pandemic, we had to reorganize. Many of those women who would have been displaced from employment related to the tourism sector found themselves going back into the agricultural sector. I think what has been said by the previous speaker really encapsulates a lot of what is happening throughout the world in terms of women and the level of support that they receive as farmers within the agricultural sector. The truth is, historically and culturally, they have received significant challenges in relation to the level of support that they're given. Even when you compare women with male farmers, the amount of land that is allocated to them is usually always smaller lots compared to our male farmers, who will receive larger lots and may not be able to produce at the level that they should. The level of support that is given to women, whether it is through grants or otherwise, is never usually the same, or they're never targeted or identified specifically to assist them in developing their farm, not just as a means to an end to support their families, but really to see that as a worthwhile level of investment that they can develop and grow. One of the critical areas for us in Antigua and Barbuda is that we recognize that we are in our weather conditions are significantly challenging for any farmer. And so we have had extensive periods of drought. We have suffered a number of hurricanes, which would have created situations of setback for any farmer, and even more so challenging perhaps for some of our female farmers who cannot find that level of financial support to start back again. And so some of the areas that we have looked at within the ministry is developing what we call an entrepreneurial development fund. Well, the government has developed that, and it is specifically geared to our women, and we are pushing it through agriculture to support our female farmers and also our females who are developing businesses, which we try to help to identify related to the farming industry. So we look at agro-processors. We have even recently through ECA, we're working on a project with beekeepers, and we have specifically identified females who will have that opportunity of expanding their knowledge and skill in that area. The government additionally has, through the Entrepreneurial Development Fund, identified funds at a low interest rate to support these female farmers in helping them expand specifically the beekeeping industry. So that is just an example of what we're doing on the ground. But there are some challenges and areas that we would love to see greater support coming from ECA. As I said, we live in the hurricane zone. We are suffering significantly with the issue of drought. And so, of course, any good farmer would need water to produce. So we have begun to look at more technology, climate resilient or climate smart and resilient practices for farming, and how we can engage more women in that area. But our resources are limited. And if we can have opportunities of women being trained specifically so that they and the government can give additional support to assist them in setting up within cooperatives or smaller groups so that they will be able to expand their business and livelihoods. We want persons to be trained to understand that farming, anything related to agricultural production, agro-processing, it's not just to meet what your needs are now, but can be developed effectively into a business. And we want them to see it as a business sector. We believe a lot of our women here have been given that disadvantage because they have not been given the opportunity through banks. Although the government has created opportunities to ensure that the tenure of land is secure for them, they're not given the same opportunity, unfortunately, through the banks for that level of support. So we're hoping that the pandemic would have shown us and given us these opportunities, and we're grateful for forums such as this to ensure that we're able to engage and to share some of the challenges that we have. But we think nothing beats training and education of our women so that they will have opportunities to see how they can strengthen their capacity even more. For us in Antigua and Barbuda, we look forward to continued work with the ECO and all our other partners. And we would love, we welcome this opportunity to ensure that we're able to reach out to our women farmers and to ensure that they can develop a business from this. Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias, Ministra Samantha Marshall.
Thank you very much, Minister Samantha Marshall. Thank you for your point of view. We are still living in areas that are prone to natural disasters, so we need to use technology to turn this subsistence agriculture into a real industry. So thank you very much, Honorable Minister Marshall. Now we go back to Rome. Thank you very much. Participation for Teresa Cristina Correa, Minister of Agriculture, Agriculture, Livestock, and Food Supply. Good. Buenas tardes, es un gran placer estar con ustedes.
Meu querido amigo Manuel Otero, pelo grande trabalho que vem fazendo no ICA. Quero cumprimentar todas as ministras, vice-ministras, secretárias, em nome da nossa ministra do Equador, que está aqui conosco, e Maria Emília, minha colega de casa,
Director General Otero.
E dizer para vocês que o
And thank him because we're always together. And I was want to say that we accept the challenge, Director General. We agree to meet every 90 days and discuss the public policies that we may have in our countries. What else do we need to do? We need to make an exchange of information so that we can help all women located in rural areas in the entire continent. And I want to tell you that we are living a century of very deep changes in our society. And I would like to thank Rebecca for her words. I would like to tell her that the pandemic might actually has given us time to think and rethink what has been happening, and particularly the role of women in agriculture, and particularly what has to do with family agriculture. In Brazil today, we have many women who are working in large, medium, and small size agriculture and companies. And I was thinking that I feel really happy when I give the titles of the agricultural reform. The government has now given this to the women who have gained that right, and when they get the deed for their property with their name on it, I believe they feel reassured that they will be able to provide for their families. So I think it's quite rewarding to say that I have seen women looking for rural credit or financing, and we have a program that is called Pronapan, in which women can get access to said financing with a lower interest so that they can develop their activities within their lands. Sometimes the land is under the name of their husbands or their children, but they can still develop a business and you can see their happiness in their faces. And that is very important for women. Within our discussions for the perfectioning of agri-food systems, the role of women as a agent for transformation in our society is ever more evident. Women who are the heads of their households and they administer their farms and they also do science. So right now it is very important for gender equity to be strengthened as one of the tools to promote social inclusion and economic growth. From the commitment of our governments in public policies that may be across sectors, we can get equality of opportunities and have a similar income because women are poorly paid and oftentimes they're also invisible and also access to education. In Brazil, in the cost, uh, as we look for a more fair society, we try to make sure that women participate in the economy, an economy that is mainly directed by men. In 2004, we only had 24% of rural properties uh, managed by women. In 2015, that increased 28%, but it's still very low. We perceive that there's a constant growth in the production of foods and renewable fibers, and without taking into consideration their role in care economy. This demonstrates women empowerment, which is key to guarantee food security worldwide. Regardless of the progress made, we still have many gaps and inequalities that asks our governments to have an energetic approach. In 2019, it was demonstrated that the income of men in Brazil was higher than that of women by 23%. Within that context, we need greater efforts to be able to eliminate this gender inequality that occurs in all of our countries. The 2030 agenda talks about the need to have a cross-cutting approach in all gender policies. So we are only a decade away to attain SDGs, and so the moment to act is now. As the Minister of Agriculture, Livestock and Food Supply Brazil, I feel truly honored to be part of this initiative that tries to enhance the role of women who are in public administration. As political authorities, we have a responsibility before all women to come up with new pathways that will guarantee women a more inclusive future for girls and women. Brazil has highlighted the importance that the food systems talk about these things to guarantee a more inclusive, healthy, and sustainable food systems. We will not have sustainability if we have a diversity of production models. I feel truly happy today to see that we are all talking about similar issues. Gender should be one of our objectives, gender equality. Empowering women regardless of whether they're producers, rural producers, educators, indigenous, on from traditional communities, among many, many others. This is key element of our ambition in the summit. The Brazilian government has tried to do what is necessary to have this taking place. So now we're talking about a population that was invisible, not only in terms of records, but it's been made invisible. So that's a word that we can use for the word challenge as well, so that there is no exclusion of women in the rural areas because there's no work for them, because they're not even taken into consideration in the records. And the representation of the Minister of Agriculture and Agri-food Canada, Marie-Claude Dubois, we have Natasha Kim, the Deputy Vice Minister, is with us today from Ottawa, Canada.
Hear you and see beautiful Canada behind you. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and greetings to everyone, and Director General Otero in particular, dear colleagues, honored guests, and of course, the powerful women of agriculture who are here today. So good afternoon from Canada. I'd like to very much thank IECA for convening this meeting, and I would like to start by acknowledging that I am joining you all virtually from the traditional and unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people here in Canada. Unfortunately, as you noted, Madam Chair, Canada's Minister of Agriculture, the Honourable Marie-Claude Dubois, the first woman to ever serve in this role, could not be here today, but please accept her very best wishes for productive discussions. This is a topic, as many of you may know, is very close to her heart. But I am delighted to be here today for Canada as the Assistant Deputy Minister for Strategic Policy at Agriculture and Agri-food Canada, as well as having had the honor to be Canada's national convener for the domestic dialogues as part of the UN Food Systems Summit this year. So it's a real pleasure to have the opportunity to speak on the topic of women at the forefront of agri-food system transformation. Bringing us together today is very timely, as others have already noted. We're living through really a critical moment in food systems. So COVID-19, as an understatement, has changed the lives of people everywhere and highlighted inequalities around the world, including here in the Americas. And though the situation is improving in places, it remains a real significant challenge to our sector in the hemisphere. The just released FAO State of Food Security and Nutrition tells us that approximately 120 million more people were facing hunger in 2020 than in 2019. And the increases in food insecurity was sharpest in Latin America and the Caribbean. So we need to work together to address these acute needs, meet Sustainable Development Goal 2 to end hunger, and to help our sector to address the challenges of climate change. If we want to realize this ambitious vision for the future, women will need to be present. So at the decision-making tables, in the fields, and in the labs. Canada appreciates this opportunity to discuss the challenges that women are facing and share our experiences on how to ensure their greater participation in the sector. So at home in Canada, the proportion of female farm operators has continued to increase over past decades. And while this progress is positive, women do still remain underrepresented in the sector and continue to face barriers. To help address these challenges, we've developed Canada's Women Entrepreneur Program, which provides women with the financing, skills, networks, and expertise they need to start or grow their agri-based businesses. The program is part of Canada's overall women entrepreneurship strategy, which seeks to double the number of women-owned and women-led businesses in Canada by 2025. Similarly, Canada's Women in Science Network is raising the profile of women in science with the goal of attracting more women to the field. So in Canada, we're also working to empower women, youth, Indigenous peoples, and other underrepresented groups to bring more diversity to decision-making in the sector. That's why a central part of Canada's first ever food policy is a diverse and multidisciplinary group of experts that advises the minister on new and emerging issues. We've also launched a Canadian Agricultural Youth Council to provide the views of young women and men on the future of the sector. In terms of Canada's international development, women are at the absolute center of our work. There are significant gaps between women and men in terms of the agricultural labor force, farm income, assets, and productivity, as we've already heard today. But just to note, globally, women make up 43% of the agricultural labor force, but less than 20% of landowners. And in the least developed countries, up to 79% of women who report agriculture as their primary source of income. Therefore, addressing gender inequalities and empowering women in agriculture is essential to achieving poverty reduction and sustainable and resilient growth in our agri-food systems. So Canada recognizes that women are powerful agents of change within the agricultural sector and that they can actively contribute to advancing agricultural development, improving food security, and mitigating the effects of climate change. Canada's Feminist International Assistance Policy places an emphasis on recognizing the barriers that limit women's success in agriculture and food production. Agricultural programming under the Feminist International Assistance Policy seeks to support and promote a range of objectives. It's a bit of a long list, but I'd like to enumerate some of them, which includes the development and implementation of gender-sensitive legislation, policies, and regulations, supporting local women-led agricultural businesses, notably creating new opportunities in agricultural value chains and food systems, supporting greater financial inclusion for women and equal access to capital markets, digital technology, and business development services, responsible agricultural investment, in particular gender lens investing, to ensure blended finance investments by the private sector benefit and empower women, and to support women's leadership and decision-making in the governance of agriculture and food systems. As well, critical is always the support of technological innovations and practices that increase productivity and reduce the time burden for women as well. So we know that women's empowerment in agriculture is essential to reduce poverty for the poorest and most vulnerable and to achieve various sustainable development goals. And that's why Canada will continue to invest in women at home and internationally. We're optimistic about the future of our food systems and the role that women will play within them, but there's still more work to do. So thank you to IECA for convening this important meeting and for all your continued work in this area. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Natasha Kim. Natasha Kim is Viceministra Adjunta, Strategic.
Thank you very much, Natasha, from the Ministry of Agriculture and Agri-food Canada. Thank you, Natasha. She has said something fundamental for our dialogue, and that is decision makers. How can we become economically active citizens and also take that leap to become decision makers? Thank you, Canada. Now, let us move to Chile. Maria Emilia Undurraga, Minister of Agriculture of Chile. Warm greetings from to Santiago. Thank you, Carla. I would like to thank and congratulate ICA, particularly the Director General, Manuel Otero, for having invited us to participate in this forum that seeks to make visible the role of women driving sustainable development, covering matters that have such great importance as economic, cultural, and territorial policies in the countries of the Americas. I would like to greet the ministers and the women ministers and secretaries of agriculture of the Americas. It is a wonderful opportunity to discuss our realities and examine this from our stance as women. Women at the forefront of agri-food system transformation shows the relevance of women in rural areas, particularly in times of pandemic, who through their work have enabled not only to feed our countries and continents, but to the diversity of their contributions have favored the development of their local areas. Also, the variety of roles that women in rural areas play show the treasure of heterogeneity of activities we have as countries, as regions, as continents. But we know that to show off this value, we still need to overcome many pending gaps. As Rebecca mentioned, the averages are worthless. We need to identify those vulnerable groups or that have experienced vulnerability to face the development of the future. First of all, we must speak from rurality and its diversity, and we must focus on the entire society. That is one step, not just speak only among growers or farmers only from the farming stance. No, we have to see farmers focusing on the rest of the world. We are connected to the well-being of the entire population, particularly the well-being of people in the city, including the identity of our different countries. Different international organizations have insisted that to develop, to reduce poverty in the world, it is important to see the role of paid and unpaid work of women. And although over the last few decades, there have been some progress made in access to goods and services for rural inhabitants, the inhabitants continue to experience significant gaps in employment and participation. As to education, for example, at least in the case of rural women in Chile, they continue to be an average schooling of 2 years less than most of the women. In a recent study by a foundation here in Chile, we saw that 77% of the respondents feel that the contribution of rural women is not recognized or very little recognized. And that says so much, because it reflects the value that even we women, how much we value these rural areas. So through our ministries and through national rural development policies, something we are very proud of after many years working with different organizations of the world, we have this change in policies with a new paradigm shift, not only focused on the rights, because that is necessary, but it is also policy developed on being fully convinced that this will open up opportunities. And this is a space for future development that has so much to contribute, not only to farmers and producers, but also to society as a whole, with a criterion that will recognize this continuum and recognizes the rural-urban relationship as a benefit for both. We will continue to drive different initiatives to improve the standard of living that will foster partnerships fundamental for us in Chile, where 9 out of 10 farmers are small farmers. Access to credit, literacy, digital literacy programs. We have talked so much about the importance of technology in this process towards the future. So we need to foster this literacy to not increase the gap, but instead close it. And something else we need to put on the floor is how to prevent violence against women, above all, not only the gap, but also ensuring food security. So through supporting family agriculture, we are promoting different working groups on collaboration, like this one today, and have public-private working groups where women, artisans, researchers, leaders, experts in forestry, lieutenants, and educators, all of these women, and there are so many roles in the rural world that not only focus on production, but that extends to all areas of development. And in that manner, we will build a country that is a country that is much fairer. We have several initiatives we could talk about. One of the most relevant services are the groups of rural women, with a rural women's group to encourage productivity in the agro-silvopastoral area, and different programs, for example, related to water, a big challenge to address climate change, with a special program from a national irrigation system focused on women, and we can share about that further information later. And in ending, we would like to thank you for this opportunity to bring us together to generate a transformation to favor the exchange of valuable experience and benefit of rural women, indigenous women, and their to all society, particularly in times of the pandemic where we have greater responsibility to supply food and continue addressing the agri-food development and development of territories and their diversity. So proud of that diversity. So we are open to the ministers and vice ministers continue with this agenda and address these changing conditions. As women, we know how to do this, and I am sure we will be able to contribute from our positions today and from the different corners in our different countries to ensure the well-being of all society. Thank you so much. Not only do we produce, we also feed. Maria Emilia Undurraga, Minister of Agriculture of Chile. Your participation has been very important to talk about gaps. We want to talk more about this, so we can do that in our open discussion in a moment. Some years ago, I worked in Italy, launching a book called Sansonina, produced only by women. There was a product that was unknown in the rest of the world. It was a type of book regarding the production in Chile. We are talking about 58 million women that work in agriculture in this continent. And we want to learn more of what you are doing there in Chile. Thank you very much. Now let us move to Ecuador, a country with great diversity also. Tanlivera, Minister of Agriculture and Livestock, Ecuador. The floor is yours. Hello, good afternoon. Very special greetings to the minister, the women ministers and vice ministers that are with us today. This is the first forum of female ministers and secretaries of agriculture of the Americas. Let us start with that. Today, we are setting a very important precedent, particularly heading a struggle, which, by the way, as some colleagues have already said, has been work that has not been visible yet. Allow me to thank the support and contribution of Manuel Otero through ICA. This is simply one more piece of evidence that through international organizations like yours, we are strengthening work that will allow us to vindicate ourselves, particularly to show that we women are capable of facing the challenges that we face in our different roles. Allow me to say, I fully defend women, and in my case, in the parliament, I had the honor of working on a law against women's violence, a tool that is helping us today to ensure empowerment and to say enough, no more. We hope this is the end of a difference in opportunities also. We need to address this globally. Well, 61% of the women in rural areas carry out agriproductive activities in Ecuador. But this has not been recognized. In fact, it has become totally invisible, and also worldwide. Family agriculture provides about 80% of the food product. In the agriculture sector, particularly in Ecuador, allow me to say that this week, in fact, we carried out a fair, and we were able to show the citizens the appraisable work carried out by our women. It is a true pride for me to be able to give these women, through training, through support, through moments where we celebrate the work done by giving them a title, a certificate, giving them an opportunity to graduate. That in itself is something that is worth highlighting and strengthening in our country. But above all, through these fairs, we have brought rural women closer to the city to make this connection. We can no longer have these paradigms where, unfortunately, we have only contributed to increase the levels of rural poverty in Ecuador and worldwide also. This is a challenge we are facing. This is a challenge that is taking us to work very closely with rural women. And these rural women today are part of the world, from producing food with good agricultural practices. This is the time to make them understand that to get these seals will only ensure we are much closer to those commercialization and marketing and trading processes. That is what we are headed to. We must find markets both nationally as well as internationally. And precisely our women are the ones that will do this. A family agriculture seal we are working on also, and that will also help us to work in close articulation with the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock and with the National Institute of Agriculture Research. Today, dear ministers, dear vice ministers, Manuel, those of you that are with us in this important meeting, we are working on something that will strengthen us, strengthen the agriculture in Ecuador with one single objective: to have more Ecuadorian agriculture in the rest of the world. We have a strong support from our president, Guillermo Lasso, to ensure this. And I will focus on three major points in my presentation. We need to have a true public policy for agriculture, particularly for women, and it must contain substantive elements. From the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock, the priority in executing public policy that will promote gender equality and empowerment of women in the agriculture sector, that in itself is essential, because this is the way to tackle the structural issues that we have been facing. In the year 2020, we published the National Agricultural Strategy for Rural Women, the objective of which was to propitiate the best conditions that aim at improving the quality of living of each of these women, of all women. And this is linked to the role of rural women also in the transformation of agri-food systems. This pre-summit we are experiencing today has also allowed us to listen to testimonies that reflect hard work where indigenous women today are heard, where young women are becoming a very active and proactive part of the work being done today. The creation of these technical working groups where the main actors are our producers, in this case women. This is a tool that allows us to listen to each other and make the best decisions with technical discussions, deep discussions, actual discussions of what is really happening in rurality. The dialogue is a permanent dynamics in this new administration. Only this way will we be able to make the best decisions for Ecuador through the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock. And this is the time to highlight the work of rural women in COVID times in Ecuador, particularly. Never did we go without food on our tables. This clearly reflects that this sector is as sensitive, shows work 24/7, even at the times of biggest despair, of biggest pain, when we lost a relative or a dear friend. Women we're always there. Rural women, we're always there. Producing, tilling the land, producing food for all citizens. And this goes beyond borders. And this we need to recognize. Not only because of the production of agricultural products, no. Their contribution to the conservation of agrobiodiversity and the contribution being made to generate hand labor, employment, opportunities, which, by the way, is a subject matter of great concern for Ecuador. But I am fully convinced, I firmly believe that the only sector that will help our nation reach economic and productive reactivation is agriculture. And this also generates employment, and this generates opportunity. Our rural women face several challenges. And history has shown us this: poverty, food insecurity, unemployment, inefficient social protection. But today, we are taking a new path. In Ecuador, rural women were fundamental at the most difficult times, as I said a moment ago. But today, we are working together, showing we have the ability, firmness, and determination to continue to fight in favor of our country. Now, something I have heard once and again is funding, timely credit. This is a tool that is we are working on with public banking through the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock. The economic situation worldwide has changed. And we all agree to this. And this forces us to make decisions to face this new reality due to the effects resulting from COVID-19 pandemic. In this context, the Ecuadorian economy requires special attention, very focused. And that is why we are focusing on special lines of credit so the agriculture sector has timely credit and at low interest rates. And for this reason, we have designed specialized credits for different line items. This is the time to think, before we produce, we should think of having the markets for those products. And that is an area we are working on. Credit is a very necessary tool. And in ending, I would like to thank you, ICA, once again, for allowing us to address this audience. Allow me to say the time has come to recognize and to show that we women play a fundamental role in the field, in the rurality, in food strategies. Equality of men and women is also represented through the possibility of participating in any part of the productive process. In marketing, trading, production, decision-making for the agriculture sector. We women have shown our ability to enter all the economic and productive areas. And our contributions are tangible, eradicating hunger and poverty. We must achieve those sustainable development goals. With our work in agriculture, we must also ensure a reduction in inequalities through our activist fight. Without giving up, we must eliminate those gaps that we have been talking about. Empowerment is work for each and every one of us. And through this type of initiative and the other initiatives we are promoting, this is a way to do so. We are responsible for pushing our gender forward in production of food. We are working very hard with great determination in favor of our women. As Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock, we are focused on the adequate evolution of public policies for rural women. As a participatory, proactive, inclusive process where indigenous Ecuadorian women and Notubia women have enough spaces to enjoy these alternatives. Thank you, FAO. Thank you, ICA. Thank you, Pamela. Thank you, Abono Mujeres, for all your hard work in this articulation. I'm fully convinced that the work of women in Ecuador is fundamental for the development of the country, of the region, and of the entire world. No doubt, we are an agent of change, not only in the positive transformation of agri-food systems, but also in social, cultural, and economic relationships. This process of feminization of agriculture is a work for each and every one of us. Everything is possible, my dear friends, if we do it as a team. Let us do it together. Today, agriculture has the face of women. We all have each other. I grew up in the agricultural sector and I live this. So that is why I am here, together with you to find appropriate solutions. Thank you all. Have a good afternoon. Thank you. Good evening from Rome. Atan Rivera, Minister of Agriculture and Livestock of Ecuador. Manuel Lotero, Director General, has a message for you. Go ahead.
Yo quería pedir mil disculpas, pero me
I
había
must apologize, but I have to participate in the closing of a forum on trade, which is another ICA banner that ICA is working on. Trade is key. So I will physically leave you right now, but that does not mean that ICA is not going to support whatever decisions you make in this area of discussion. So I pledge that the excuse me, no audio. With our Deputy Director General Lloyd Day will stay with you the rest of the morning. Thank you. Thank you very much. Manuel Lotero, Director General of the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation on Agriculture. Lloyd Day, Deputy Director, will be joining us. Thank you. We would like to thank Jewel Brona, Deputy Secretary of Agriculture of the United States, for waiting for us. 20% of the agriculture food in the United States comes from the hands of Hispanic migrants. So let us listen to you, Minister Brona. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Director General, for your presentation and introduction. The United States is a staunch supporter of IICA, and we thank you for your leadership and for organizing events that address collective problems for our hemisphere. I would like to extend a warm hello to my colleagues attending today's event. We've all been greatly impacted by COVID-19 and have undertaken significant efforts to maintain a robust food supply chain. I want to especially thank the dedicated individuals working day after day on the front lines globally throughout this time of uncertainty, including our agriculture and food supply chain workers. The focus of today's event, Women at the Forefront of Agri-Food System Transformation, is timely as we get set up for the coming United Nations Food System Summit. The United States has a long-standing commitment to social, economic, and environmental sustainability, and we must collectively work together to address the challenges of producing and providing safe, affordable, accessible food to a growing world population. Women in agriculture pave the way for a better future. As leaders, it is our responsibility to make sure the next generation of all women are educated and encouraged so that they can fully step into power. Women have been a critical part of farm and ranch operations across the United States and around the globe for centuries. But now, as women in agriculture, we have a unique opportunity to be the change that we want to see in our industry. We must build on the incredible legacy of stewardship, innovation, and productivity, and help one another succeed. Whether it is a farm business that feeds the world, a relationship that empowers and supports your community, industry, and neighbors, or land that you leave in better condition than you found it, there are many ways to build and grow your contribution to agriculture. It can be challenging as a strong, independent woman looking to advance in your career field. But breaking the mold is what women in agriculture do. And it is what sets us apart and makes us good role models for the next generation. We need to turn our challenges into opportunities. I'm heartened because I see my peers and so many other women redefining workplaces and organizations so that we shed traditional expectations of what leadership and success looks like. We must promote a multi-stakeholder approach to food systems, where different stakeholders, including governments, multilateral institutions, development banks, and private sector, and civil society work together to build economic sustainability. We must promote inclusive livelihood development by rejecting a one-size-fits-all solution and considering the needs of a growing and increasingly mobile population, including economic and market diversification and increased productivity and efficiency. We must leverage digital technologies to increase job opportunities, skills development for the modern food economy, and equitable access to inputs, especially for women, youth, and indigenous peoples. As we emerge from this pandemic, innovation and technological development will be vital to guarantee our food systems develop sustainably to feed the world's growing population. Women are involved in agriculture, and we need to make sure we are represented in all leadership positions across the spectrum. We need to continue driving and making policy decisions, and we must take seriously the incredible responsibility of paving the way for other young women who are looking to us as role models. I want to thank you all for your time today, and we look forward to working together through our challenges. Thank you so much.
Muchas gracias. Gracias, Ministra Jewel Burnham, Subsecretaria de
Thank you
Agricultura.
very much. Deputy Secretary of Agriculture, Madam Jewel H. Bronner. We believe that we will want this to be the forum for you to present your concerns, what you think about what is going on in your sector, in your countries, and also to contribute in general ideas for our second forum. So we're going to open the discussion panel so that aside from ministers of Antigua and Barbuda, Brazil, Canada, Chile, Ecuador, the Deputy Secretary of the United States, and Natasha Kim from Canada, we also have the presence of the Vice Minister of Development, Marta Lucia Rodriguez Lozano, Laura Pacheco Vares, Vice Minister, Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock, Costa Rica. We also have Maria Emilia Pacas from Minister of Agriculture and Livestock of El Salvador. We have Judith Ordonez from the Undersecretary of Livestock and Agriculture of Honduras that we read, and also she's from the Department of Agriculture and Livestock. She's the Undersecretary of Livestock. We also have Bettina Aguilera Panagua, Vice Minister of Agriculture from the Minister of Agriculture and Livestock in Paraguay. She's also an agronomist. And we also have Marisabel Remy, who is the Vice Minister of Agricultural Development Policy and Oversight, the Ministry of Agricultural Development and Irrigation of Peru. And we also have Miriam Guzman, the Vice Minister of Rural Development of the Dominican Republic. I'd like to thank you all for being present here, and we ask you to please turn on your cameras. We ask you for your interventions to be only a minute, 2 minutes long, so that you can highlight the things that you believe to be most important and think of what we think about women in agriculture in the American continent, which is the first exporter of food in the world. Right, corridors taken by organized crime who are victim of local violence, agricultural problems, tenure of land, climate change, pandemic, and local custom, local traditions. So if you want, you can raise your hand and I'll be happy to give you the floor. Thank you very much. Would anybody like to begin the dialogue? Or I can just call you directly. Okay, Miriam Guzman, I thank you for the fact that you're here with us today. Go ahead. The floor is yours. What would be your thoughts about all these different topics that you mentioned before? Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Ika, for this opportunity that we are being given. I'm very happy to be able to participate. As you were saying a few minutes ago, hopefully we won't have to count how many of us are present here. I lost track already. I am the second women minister of the Ministry of Agriculture. And we have not had, I'm a vice minister, and we have never had a female minister. I would like to highlight two things. The first one is that even though this process that has to do with agri-food system is a good opportunity for inclusion and empowerment of women, they can also be a way to put them in a box. So we need to tackle this topic in terms of what is happening, because if we just think of them as part of the production of food and being in the kitchen and being in the post-harvest, being this such an important topic and knowing that we also need to tackle this, we would like us to keep our eyes open so that we are not stereotyped. Women have all the capabilities as entrepreneurs, as producers, and therefore they should work to be included in the economic process, in the production, because we're already part of the production process. In the food production process, we are present in many different communities, even more than men. But when we talk about the distribution of income, resources, acknowledgement with regards to economic participation, that is where we are not being given the right place. And if we lose this push, then we lose access to technology, to improvement. And so I'm very sure that if women had the economic capacity that men have in the entire Latin American and the Dominican Republic particularly, we would have a more highly technified culture. We would have a better use of water, a much efficient use of water, because women have always tried to accommodate and try to do our work a more efficient one. So if we do that by providing women economic participation, we can then improve technology in agriculture as well. So Miriam Guzman, Vice Minister of Rural Development in the Dominican Republic, and she is putting a point on the table that is quite interesting in the discussion. We have been producers for a long time now. How can we produce the product of said production? And that means having a right census, distributing subsidies correctly. And look, our representatives from Ecuador and Brazil need to step away. They just want to say goodbye, their goodbyes for 1 minute. So the Secretary of Brazil and the Secretary of Ecuador, and it's a great pleasure to see you again.
Eu quero agradecer ao ICA por esta oportunidade de nos reunir de tratarmos de assunto.
ICA for giving us this opportunity for gathering us to deal with such an important topic. And I want to tell you that the Ministry of Agriculture of Brazil is at your service, so we can all then schedule a meeting with more specific topics so that we can participate and start acting. We already know what the problems are for women in rural areas, rural producers. And so I think the time is now to start developing public policies hands-on that may be efficient to help women in the rural areas and to overcome that problem of lack of visibility and lack of income. And this is a challenge that has been posed before all of us. Thank you very much. So now I give the floor to our minister from Ecuador. Thank you very much, Minister, Vice Ministers, and the moderator of today's gathering, a gathering for rural women, which I believe should be a recurrent one and a permanent one. I believe that this rooms for dialogue and consensus allow us to articulate the work from different countries and strengthen this is our responsibility. It is the responsibility of each and every single woman. So let's keep on fighting for our rights. Let's keep on working and looking for each of those objectives that we can set forth in our lives. Nothing is impossible when we fight with conviction, with determination, and with thank you all very much. Good afternoon. Thank you very much, Minister of Ecuador. Greetings to the headquarters of the Embassy of Brazil in Rome. And I would like to thank the Minister of Agriculture and Livestock of Ecuador to tell us about the Ministry of Ecuador to reactivate the experience of coffee in Ecuador. But let me take the floor from you for a moment. And I would like just to say one thing about, or here, the Vice Minister, Marta Lucía Rodriguez from Colombia. When we started the session, we said that these two things are linked. We talked about dry rural corridors and then under or flooded another part of the year. Poor access, wrong subsidy that are also being threatened by organized crime. So what is it that we're doing wrong, Minister and Vice Minister? First of all, greetings to all my colleagues. It is a great honor for me to share this time with all of you. From Colombia's perspective, we have realized that we have all those limitations as rural women to continue doing this social work that is so important to continue working in the field. And amidst the pandemic, the sector that grew the most in Colombian economy was the agricultural and livestock sector. And that is thanks to women who worked nonstop to continue guaranteeing food security for all Colombians. And I believe that all of us should thank to our farmers. We, of course, see that there are a number of limitations. So we've been working in trying to give opportunities and things so that they can continue producing. First of all, we have to talk about credit. As ministers and vice ministers of the sector of agriculture, we should try to give them access to agriculture, to credit. And with regards to what the Colombian Ministry of Agriculture is doing, we have some special credit lines that is aimed at rural women in rural area and youth in the rural area. And they get extra points for belonging to the rural sector so they can have access to this credit, because we have realized that women handle costs a lot better. They never lose their harvest, maybe that may due to factors in career or climate issues. They might lose it, but not because of poor management of their finances. While sometimes we see that happening in men, we have been trying to articulate together with the Ministry of Defense to try to provide them with more security so that they can have access, and they have access to the harvest through agriculture by contract, which is something we want to do. We want to be able to harvest to sell, not just to harvest. No, so we want all farmers to have the sale of their harvest already guaranteed. Of course, this is a joint effort so that if we do not interact among the different institutions in improving their roads, rural areas, in terms of security as well, and making sure that women can leave their children in the rural schools so that they don't have to teach themselves how to read and write, but can dedicate themselves to harvest. In Colombia, almost 56% of the harvest of female farmers is for self-consumption. So they can continue growing and feed themselves, and that allows us to have a stronger youth. And so maybe we can think of how we can work together to stay in the field, because we see a lot of migration from the rural area to the cities, not only by women, but also by youth. So hopefully the next session that we have, maybe we can think about the policies and strategic activities we can develop from our departments to continue strengthening and favor the field. Yes, what you're telling us is quite important. The idea to harvest to sell, but sell to harvest. And that is the important point of how ministries should all work together to make sure that violence does not trash the productive effort in the field. So I would like to ask that the Ministry of El Salvador, and then you did Ordóñez from Honduras, so that they can tell us about their experiences.
Muchas gracias.
Julia, go ahead. It is a great honor to be participating here in this great honor together with all of you. The pandemic has definitely shown us all the things that we have to face, but I do also believe that it has shown us opportunities. I think that the fact that we are all together in this forum is thanks to the pandemic. It would be very hard for us to be seeing each other face to face. So in El Salvador, we have been working on a master plan for agricultural rescue, where the third pillar of this plan, it has to do with ruralization. This is a topic that we have been able to hear about and talk a lot about in this forum. So this agricultural rescue plan in El Salvador takes into consideration being able to reduce the gap between the needs that exist from the cities to the field. And then it also has a very important component with regards to the empowerment of women. I believe that when we talk about empowerment, we should use it in a quite responsible manner, because many women are not ready to have this empowerment. So we want to bring the training to them and reduce the gap. We're talking about land tenure here, which is key also to provide this recognition to their work in the field. In El Salvador, we are accompanying different initiatives that are aimed at reducing the gaps and help in the development of women and the visualization of the key role they already play, because many women are already doing very important things in our country's agricultural sector. But oftentimes, in most cases, we cannot see them, we cannot visualize them. In the sense, we believe that productive change transparency is key. We need to make sure that women are being paid the right price for the products they are producing. And in this sense, transparency plays a key role. I would also like to add that we have been working on different programs at strengthening women in the sense that, sadly enough, during the pandemic, other sectors were being facilitated different activities, women's difficulties were increased because it was not only that they had to work in agriculture, which was something they were already doing, but now they had to keep their kids at home and deal with other problems that they were facing. So we are working on the strengthening of women in this master plan for agricultural livestock rescue. We need to empower women in education as well. We need to fight for public policies that help us train and educate women. I believe that educating a woman is educating a family and therefore educating a country. This is what we're doing in El Salvador, and we want to support public policies and regional policies and world policies that can meet the initiatives that may reduce the gaps and that are aimed at developing the indigenous women, rural women, and women in agriculture. Thank you all. It is a great pleasure meeting you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Maria Lilian Pacas, Minister of Agriculture and Livestock in El Salvador. Ordóñez, Vice Minister. With regards to what Vice Minister Lilian Pacas was saying, is how can we interrupt a effort, the national effort due to migration? Good morning, everybody. It is a great pleasure to be here today. Thank you, Ika. I believe we should highlight the successes of women in terms of agriculture, because we actually have many cases of success in this area. I'm the first woman who is in the Undersecretary of Livestock. I have worked for 20 years in the part of outreach and education. I believe that in part of outreach and education of women is very, very important. We have demonstrated that when a woman is given a loan, she makes the best of it. It's also important to work at the children's level. If we really want to achieve changes, we need to start by the youth and the kids and children to prevent migrations from taking place and all the abuses that take place. So I propose that the cases of success of women at all levels, from the small farmer, medium-sized farmer, and people like those who are here today, we have managed to attain success. And so that visibility of these things is what we need, so that people can actually see that women can do things real. And regardless what our background is, we can show them we can. Thank you very much. Thank you, Judith Ordóñez, Undersecretary of Livestock. And now we want to go all the way to Paraguay, because Bettina Aguilera, Vice Minister of Agriculture, Minister of Agriculture and Livestock, is an agronomist engineer. So what policies do we repeat and are not correct? Yes, thank you. Engineer Bettina Aguilera is right now at a meeting with the rural sector. So I am here on her behalf. I'm as Chief of Staff of the Ministry of Agriculture. It is a great pleasure to be with all of you today, sharing this time with you, and it's very important for rural women in the region to have the empowerment of the sector without inequalities, with transparency and full responsibility and accountability. We need to strengthen the training of rural women. They need to be trained in this highly competitive world in which we live in. We also need Paraguay to improve the quality of our production, not to be always marked by the standards given, but to innovate in terms of technology. During the pandemic, we have strengthened the agricultural and livestock fairs, which have been of much help to rural women. In Paraguay, many are also the heads of their households and are the leaders in terms of production of food. They're also leaders in the development of inclusive policies because women have characterized themselves by inclusion. So we want a comprehensive development that will make a difference, a development that is not stopping now with ideas that have had some negative impact in the sector. We want this to be a constructive, participatory sector in terms of equal conditions among all sectors. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your participation. Before we continue, I believe Laura Pacheco, Vice Minister of Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock in San Jose, Costa Rica. I don't see her picture. Please just let me know if you're here. She's not here. I believe she's not here. Okay. I would like Rebecca Grisman before we finish our forum. Can you hear us, Rebecca? I believe she doesn't hear us. So let me go back to Miriam Guzman, Vice Minister of Rural Development of the Ministry of Agriculture in the Dominican Republic. We are about to conclude. Let's remember that this is the first forum. The idea is for you to connect so that then we can think of developing policies. But everything we talked about, training, subsidy, quality of production, technological innovation, right measurement, and having the national plan where different secretaries or departments work together. Where should we begin? Miriam, the floor is yours. Well, I believe that while we do not talk about comprehensive development that does not start from the crop, and let's not think about developing the crop of coffee, but the whole coffee production, including farmers, and therefore ministries have to work together with coffee growers because we cannot continue promoting for us to grow coffee in the highlands and for our producers to have to go up and down roads that actually put their lives at risk. The roads should be well conditioned, or for women to participate fully in the production process, and they have problems because there is no place to leave their kids while they work, like kinder or something. So again, this has to be a comprehensive development, and women have to fight for that because it's not now that we have 2 shifts of work. We have 3 or 4 based on how fast the economy is moving. So I understand that this comprehensive development is key to be carried out with the support of all different ministries that might work together with the Ministry of Agriculture in trying to attain the development of crops. Let's begin with the one that is most important for the country. Let's begin with the one that has maybe the most importance in terms of the international market. Let's start with whichever one we want to begin with, but we need to address the communities around this crop. Yes, thank you very much, my Vice Minister. This is a topic that has to do with women, and the transformation of agri-food system is a high-level topic that involves the executive branch, the legislature, and discussions in terms of local municipalities, the distribution of budgets and human rights, and policies against violence and climate change policies. And with 50 women who are active in this area, this is something that we need to bring to the table urgently. So thank you to all ministers, vice ministers, secretaries, and undersecretaries who attended the call today. And we want to listen now to Mr. Lloyd today, who is Deputy Director General of ICA in San Jose, Costa Rica. Thank you very much, Carla. Greetings to people in Mexico. My mother was Mexican, so it's always a pleasure to hear from Mexico. So thank you very much for moderating this very important forum today. For a while now, ICA has committed itself to making visible and empowering women in agriculture. This event is definitely a key step towards that. And let's think that institutionally, it is important to institutionalize it so that the leaders of agriculture of the Americas can get together to talk and speak to the world. From ICA, we propose to continue organizing this forum or fora periodically in order to make decisions together, and so that then this can be conveyed in different areas at the highest levels and all levels. So this is something that was mentioned by the Ministry of Brazil, who was joined by the Ministry of Ecuador. Get ready for this forum. I was talking to the first Secretariat of Veneman, first Secretariat of Agriculture in the US. And she's been a friend of ours for maybe, I don't know, 27 years, when she was the very first Secretary of Agriculture in California. Now there's a second Secretary of Agriculture, female Secretary of Agriculture in the California, but there are still other secretaries because they will be secretaries one day, and that is important, but we still need more. So this forum with you is very, very important to be able to start with the discussion amongst yourselves and with you, and then this may be translated into public policies so that we can develop with your help and to incorporate women in the agricultural sector. I thank you all for your time. I wish you a great week, and for those in Rome, I wish you the very best in that pre-Congress for the Food Summit. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Lloyd Day, Deputy Director General of ICA. The general objective of this forum is to have a dialogue and exchange so that we can share this experiences of and this time might not be enough. We already talked about some policies for rural development, this need to look at the measuring tools we use, how to distribute the work, how do we distribute production, and many other things. So out of hopefully these experiences that you have shared may help you manage your public office in a better way. And on behalf of ICA, I thank you all. I'm Calimeria Sanchez. I wish you all a very good day. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, gracias.
Thank you, Minister Marshall.